Shruti, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
How are you
Please
all?
meet Aditya, sir. Aditya is, Aditya, can you see, ma'am?
Yeah.
Yes. Nupur, ma'am, just for a minute, you can stop and we can then
Good afternoon. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We are good and we are looking forward to your session.
Thanks.
So Aditya, ma'am is leading 3 faculties. She, under her wing, has Faculty of Fine Arts, Media and Journalism, Faculty of Law, as well as Faculty of Liberal Arts. So a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
And she is guiding us really well. And within these 3 years now, the school has already progressed, but we are hoping to go,
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will. Right.
And ma'am, Aditya is an excellent artist, first of all. His anatomical mastery is excellent. He's done his master's from London, I think.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
and
UK. Yeah.
And now we have invited him because he is very good in one of the subjects that we have, that is illustration. And he teaches fashion illustration and other kinds of illustrations. So that's why he will be talking about art as well as illustration.
That's great.
So, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No, you continue, Shruti.
So now we will be starting the process of going live. And Nupur, ma'am, you can start the screen. Pallavi ma'am and Nupur ma'am, you can simultaneously start recording at your ends also. Ma'am, can you start the music also? Then I will go live because we are all set. Nupur ma'am? Once you start the music, I will go live. And after going live, we will wait for a minute since we are ahead of time. And we'll start sharp at 3. Nupur ma'am, you want, you can restart your share. No worries. You can stop this and yeah.
everyone. According to the tradition...
Just a minute. Let us, Nupur ma'am, stop this share and then we will start.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. According to the tradition of MIT WPU, we will start this SoFA Talks session 5 with World Peace Prayer.
नमो जियाद्या वेद प्रतिपाद्या जय जय स्वसंवेद्या आत्मरूपा देवातुति गणेषु सकलार्थमतिप्रकाशु म्हणे निवृत्तिदासु अवधारि गोदी गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः.
A very good afternoon. Welcome to the 5th session of the SoFA Talk series. I am Akanksha Mavadi from first year BFA Applied Arts. It gives me immense pleasure to begin with the 5th session of SoFA Talks. I would like to welcome respected Professor Anuradha Parasar, Dean, Faculty of Fine Arts, Media and Journalism, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Faculty of Law. I would also like to welcome respected Dr. Shruti Nigurkar, Head of School, School of Fine Arts, all faculty members, all student members of MIT World Peace University, as well as other participants who have joined this event. And finally, it is my pleasure to welcome our esteemed guest and resource person for today's session, Mr. Aditya Shirke, visual artist. MIT WPU School of Fine Arts is organizing SoFA Talks under the inspiration by our revered professor, Dr. Vishwanath D. Karad, founder president of MIT World Peace University and creator of MIT World Peace Dome, and under the motivation and inspirations of a dynamic leader, an educationist, and a committed nationalist, Honorable Executive President Shri Rahul V. Karad. MIT WPU School of Fine Arts has planned SoFA Talk series from 7th May to 30th June under the tutelage of MIT WPU Academic Leadership Team, Professor N.T. Rao, Vice Chancellor, Professor R.M. Chitnis, Pro Vice Chancellor, and Professor Anuradha Parasar, Dean, FLFMJ Law. We also welcome our beloved Honorable Dean Madam, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Fine Arts, Media and Journalism, Professor Anuradha Parasar, who is our guiding light, mentor, and under whose supervision we are organizing SoFA Talks 2021. Thank you, ma'am. You keep us motivated. Now, I would like to hand over to Dean, ma'am.
Thank you, Akanksha. Very good afternoon to one and all. And respected resource person for today's SoFA Talk, Mr. Aditya Shirke, faculty, staff, and my dear students of MIT World Peace University, Faculty of Fine Arts, Liberal Arts, Media and Journalism Law, and all participants from various schools, colleges, industry, academia, and society. I extend hearty welcome to one and all to SoFA Talks of School of Fine Arts at Dr. Vishwanath Karad MIT World Peace University, Pune, India. And heartfelt warm gratitude and earnest thanks to Mr. Aditya Shirke, multi-award winning visual artist, for sparing time to be here with us for this interaction.
Thank you very much.
As pointed by Akanksha and Dr. Shruti also, that May 7th, 2021, we have inaugurated the first edition of SoFA Talks, which is a very noble initiative by MIT WPU School of Fine Arts, SoFA Talk series. And we will be concluding this on 30th June 2021. And on almost on daily basis, I see that we are having SoFA Talk series, wherein we intend to invite almost 20-25 experts from fine arts and applied arts area. The SoFA Talk series, it's a unique interaction, I should say, unique interaction series between MIT WPU faculty and students of fine arts and applied arts with eminent members from industry, society, and academia. And, I always find pleasure in sharing what is SoFA Talks. So MIT WPU School of Fine Arts. School of Fine Arts, abbreviated as SoFA. And this talk series being organized by School of Fine Arts, so SoFA Talks. So this is the information. I thought that few of the new participants who are there, they would like to know what is SoFA, why this is being called as SoFA. So School of Fine Arts, MIT WPU School of Fine Arts talk series is SoFA Talks. So that's the genesis and the full form about this. And this SoFA Talks is different from another platform, which is Samvad series, where we invite experts from all disciplines, whether it is liberal arts, fine arts, media and journalism, law, English, political science, psychology. So that is a multidisciplinary platform, but the SoFA Talks is a very specialized platform where we are inviting experts from fine arts and media and journalism for interaction with all budding fine artists and applied artists and all those students who are from schools, who are from college, and maybe the experts from the field, faculty members, to come and interact with the experts and to learn from their experiences and their journey. So through this great and splendid platform, SoFA Talk series, we create this opportunity for interaction not only with faculty, students, staff, but also with our parents and participants from industry, academia, and society at large. They all get opportunity to listen to and to interact with many eminent resource persons from fine arts and applied arts area. And since this session is going live, of course, the benefit will be there for all the viewers as well. So at MIT WPU Faculty of Liberal Arts, Fine Arts, Media and Journalism Law, we call this division as FLFMJ, Division 4 of the university. And we have a versatile FLFMJ Samvad platform, which I just talked about. Now coming to School of Fine Arts, Shirke sir, here we have a unique and distinct integrated interdisciplinary program. I'm sure Dr. Shruti might have shared that with you, and all faculty members might have given some briefing about that. So we have a unique integrated interdisciplinary program, BFA Applied Arts and MFA Applied Arts, which has been designed with the inbuilt blend of yoga, peace courses, and MIT WPU pedagogy. So maybe sometime we'll seek your expertise in reviewing our curriculum also.
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah.
And now that we are approaching and our students are really keen to listen to you, your experiences in the journey of visual arts, art curation, illustration, and research. And I'm sure that after attending your session, students and all participants will get valuable advice and guidance, not only about topic, but they will also get new directions. How should they take it forward? So coming back to the topic, I'm happy that Shirke sir is here to discuss on this topic of significant and immense importance. And I don't want to miss on this opportunity to invite you, sir, via this platform on behalf of university leadership team, as and when things are normal for in-person interaction with our student. Right now, you are virtually interacting. for in-person interaction. And also, we would be happy to take you for a visit to our world largest bee stone. And some student may be willing to associate with you under your supervisionship and mentorship for internship as well. So
Good.
those student will also may approach you through their faculty and mentors.
Sure.
And before I conclude, of course, this is the most significant and important aspect that we are meeting through this SoFA talk, and the people behind, we need to, I really appreciate all of them, all the faculty and students of fine arts for coming up with this challenging assignments to organize 25 SoFA talk series in 2 months time. And I appreciate SoFA faculty, Dr. Shruti, Samida, Nivedita, Nupur, Pallavi, Prachi, and all students for this unique and outstanding contribution for coming up with such a meticulously planned SoFA talks at MIT WPU School of Fine Arts. And Dr. Shruti, of course, she needs special mention for facilitating the process. And all my dear School of Fine Arts students, compliments to all of you for supporting faculty in smooth organization of SoFA Talk. And now it's high time. Let's start SoFA Talk on journey of multi-award winning visual artist. Once again, I express gratitude and thanks to Shirke sir for being here with us today for this interaction with students and faculty of MIT WPU, Faculty of Liberal Arts, Fine Arts, Media and Journalism and Law, and all participants from various schools, colleges, industry, and society. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean Ma'am, for your guidance and your words. Now, I would like to request everyone present on the panel to pose for an online photo record. If you have any questions to ask our guests, you can post them in the question answers box. Without further ado, I invite respected Dr. Shruti Negurkar, Head of School, School of Fine Arts, to give a brief about SoFA Talks.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank our Dean Ma'am, Dr. Anuradha Parasar Ma'am, for giving us immense, invaluable guidance always, whether it is SoFA Talks or many other initiatives that we do under the School of Fine Arts. MIT World Peace University School of Fine Arts is a very young school. And when I call it young, it's not only that, it is entering into its 4th year, and that way it is young, but it is also young because it is full of young and enthusiastic faculty. And we are striving to grow and benchmark globally. So we are doing a lot of efforts and, planning so that the school will benchmark with the global standards in its academic endeavors as well as many other endeavors. And I'm really thankful to our Dean Ma'am for guiding us in that process. Also, I will like to say that, this school, although it is young, it is already under its wing 3 major programs which come under applied arts. One is the BFA program with applied arts as specialization, which is already running. From this coming year, we are also starting admissions for MFA applied arts. And I will like to say that, in the heart of Pune city, Kothur campus, we are starting this amazing program because now globally people can come and, take advantage of these programs. Pune is the heart of cultural existence, not only in Maharashtra, but it is very well known for a lot of cultural activities in India. And as part of the campus, there are many things that keep on happening, and our students do get benefits of all these things. We are also starting with PhD program in visual arts. And that is how now at every level, students and scholars can participate and become a part of MIT World Peace University School of Fine Arts. So I will like to welcome everybody whenever, things are normal. Do visit us, do visit the school, and we love to have you. Today, we are very, very, very happy to have Aditya Shirke as part of our SoFA Talks. This is the 5th session, and we have had people like Shobna Hadap, Samir Prabhude, Sandeep Bhamkar, Manosis Sarkar, who have spoken about different topics, pertaining to applied arts. Many people don't know that applied art program opens doors to many different professional opportunities in advertising, user interface, user experience, animation, illustration, e-learning, space design, website design, social media, typography, calligraphy, photography, graphic design, branding, packaging, and the list actually goes on. And it is amazing to know that our students have already, within the third year started with their internships and, you know, doing exchange with the industry already. Today, we are going to talk about another special topic, which is illustration. Our guest today is a very eminent award-winning personality. And without further ado, I'm going to, request the student moderators to take this thing ahead and do the introduction of Aditya Shirke sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shruti ma'am. Now, I would like to hand over to Ria to introduce our guest and resource person.
Thank you so much, Akanksha. Mr. Aditya Shirke is multi-award winning visual artist. He is merit holder in a master's degree in fine arts from a top art university in the UK. A gold medalist in digital art, he has worked as an art critic and expert for a leading art foundation in Mumbai. He is regularly invited by galleries to participate in art shows and has conducted 7 solo and more than 20 group shows in India and abroad. He has also worked as a pre-production artist with US-based animation firm. He is co-curator and conceptualizer for the show W Not Equal to M, the Mona Lisa Kalagram, Pune. He teaches digital illustration, character design, and clay sculpting to fashion, design, and animation students. He conducts research in arts and he is an expert in human anatomy. So now I would like to hand over to Aditya sir for his presentation.
Thank you so much. So again, today we are going to have Aditya. Aditya sir, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. So today we are going to have again a question and answer kind of a format.
Sure.
So I'm going to invite Pallavi ma'am to join me in doing this session with you. Yeah. And I'm going to start with my first question, which is, your journey as an artist has been very, very rich. We can say that because you are already a recipient of many awards and accolades. As an artist, can you take us through the milestones that you have, already gone through and orient us about your work to begin with? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I didn't plan to take up art as such, and I especially didn't plan to become a painter specifically. Okay. Interestingly, when I did plan to take up art, it was the subject at hand that we're discussing about, which is illustration. So I entered art school thinking I would be doing illustrations. I'll come to that a bit later. But I was always fairly good at art, better than other students in school. So that was there, but I didn't take it too seriously. And I actually gave my architecture. I did my science in the 11th and 12th, and I gave my architecture entrance, cleared that, and I was almost on the verge of taking admission into architecture. But on the way, I met my guru, Shri Pratap Mule, who some of you may know. The older people amongst us will know that he was the illustrator for Amar Chitra Katha, and at a point, the entire Indian comic scene was illustrated by him. So I was fortunate to kind of meet him, and then I used to visit him regularly. He was, fortunately for me, fond of me, and I was fond of him too. So we spent quite a lot of time together. I used to just spend hours in his studio, and then at some point I realized that this is what I want to do. And like I said, since he was doing comics and illustrations, and I considered that as art as well, of course. So I thought going into art college and honing my skills so that I can do something similar to what he was doing was how I got into art school. So I took up painting. Uh, Funnily enough, uh, my parents first thought I was going to do applied art. So I only told them after a month or so that I've actually taken up uh, painting instead of applied art. So anyway, so that happened, and so it was a 5-year course in Abhinav from Pune, and so that was quite a interesting space. 5 years is a lot to uh, learn quite a few things and unlearn quite a few things. So uh, Abhinav was a good space for all of that, and after which I, with my wife, both of us are artists. So we did a few shows together, and for a few years, actually professionally went straight head on into the art field as such. Uh, and along with it, I also uh, did like somebody mentioned in the introduction. I was a like pre-production artist for an US-based animation firm. At that point, I wanted to focus on painting per se. So I did a pre-production artist role over there, and after which in about 2008 or so, I was selected for the Camberwell College of Arts, their MA course in drawing. So I was about, I guess, the only second Indian to be selected for that. But I couldn't go because I was underage for the scholarships at that point. So then later on, about 2013, I reapplied to a couple of universities over there and took up the university of my choice and went there for a year and a half. Did my master's in fine art in the UK over there, and I've been showing consistently. So I paint and I do exhibitions quite a bit. I illustrate as well, but illustration is is a part of me because that is how I came into this field. I mean, that is how I've come into being into the artistic sphere. But painting is more of a forte. But I uh, love the idea of illustration. I love the whole thought and process of illustration, and so and it's a very fine line between illustration and painting. Uh, so I don't see too much of a problem stepping on both those stones. So
We will
yeah,
come to that for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
I mean, we are definitely going to get into that realm.
sure,
But before that, you know, let us talk first about your digital art. And I'm going to request Pallavi ma'am to take the next question because that
sure,
is another interesting.
sure.
Pallavi ma'am, please unmute yourself. Pallavi ma'am, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your flight into the digital art is really commendable. So would you like to comment on the in the digital art, like the slight differences which layman or even artists are not very aware of? So you may want to highlight or give a little brief about the differences in digital arts itself.
Okay, so you want a difference between digital art and traditional media, or
That also we could address, or maybe in digital art also there
itself?
are
Okay,
various forms, so
right.
which many of us are not very much aware of.
Oh, sure, sure. So, uh, being a painter, primarily traditional mediums I've dabbled a lot in, obviously. but I've taken up digital painting and illustration quite a bit, especially for the last 4 to 5 years. So I specifically work with the iPad and the Apple Pencil a lot. Uh, when it comes to digital illustrations, there typically two kinds of methods or startup points I see that differentiate digital illustration. One is a very typically digital based software based approach, okay, which is what digital illustrations used to be from the early or the late 90s up to around 2013. Yes, so where I'm obviously talking about softwares like Photoshop or Illustrator, and where largely the input, even if you had a stylus, the input was more of a you would say was non pressure based. Okay, so pressure had nothing to do with it. It was about clicks and double clicks, and creating areas and gradients with uh, selection, right? So that created a particular look in digital illustration because you had a particular algorithm that did the gradient, a particular lasso tool that selected in a particular way and gave you a very distinct edge. So all of those things, and the way you could draw without a pressure based input uh, gave it its own feel and look. Post 2013, I suppose, I mean, prior to that as well, but with the largely democratization of touch-based inputs and surfaces. Okay, so with that, uh, drawing on digital uh, softwares changed significantly. So even with the existing softwares like Photoshop or something, and then additionally new softwares like Sketchbook from Autodesk or Procreate, all of these, they really try to mimic the physics uh, of traditional paints or dry media like pencil and so on and so forth. Or if it comes to oil, they try to mimic the physics of how a wet paint would, slush into an existing layer of paint. All of that was possible because of pure touch inputs. So that again opened up a larger avenue for digital illustrations, and that distinct gap between digital illustration and traditional format illustration. That kind of is almost non-existent right now, in my opinion. And then this is largely what I feel are the two mainstay uh, illustrative processes. But there is another third one which in the last 2 or 3 years has become much more prominent, and that is a 3D based illustrating uh, method. Okay, so even though your what you would say is the end result may look 2D, you're actually using 3D softwares to create environments, to create entire characters, so that you can light them, you can create textures and skins, and use Keyshot, use Blender, use all sorts of other 3D.
Were they more used in architecture before that?
Sorry.
Were they more used in architecture before and not in applied arts?
Yeah, most of the CAD softwares I think were typically designed for engineering and slightly for architecture people. But I think, like I said, with this advent of touch-based inputs, all these also are now taking advantage of these input methods. So it has become more easier for creative people also to handle these, and I won't say easier, but less boring. Okay, if I can use that word. Okay, because creative people want to be hands-on with it. They don't want to type out certain bits of code and to get a highlight on the cheek. They'd much rather, do that rather than type out a code. So I guess that hardware change has also driven uh, a larger use of these 3D methods. So these are the three large chunks I would say I see in digital illustration and the way digital illustration is uh, done, I suppose.
Okay. So next, I will like to talk to you about, the differentiation between painting and illustration. Specifically because for a common person, a common man, while he's looking, the recipe looks very similar. I mean, you have some paints, you have a drawing sheet or, some surfaces, and you make the processes also look similar. So draw and then you color and then your work gets ready.
Right.
So although it looks similar, there is definite difference between painting and an illustration. And the differences can come in the purposes, they can come in the choice of materials, styles, and a lot of other things, including time management and professional perspectives.
Right.
Or so I will definitely want you to talk about all these things and how do you look
Sure.
at these.
Sure. It's a very good question actually, and it's one question that really bothered all of us in art school. I don't know if it does right now, but in during our time in art
It
school,
does, and that's
okay,
why I will like
right,
to know your
right.
perspective,
So,
definitely.
what is an illustration and what is a painting? So what happened is sometimes you did a painting, you're very happy with it, and you took it to your professor, and the professor said, "Yeah, it's good, but it's illustrative." Okay, and sometimes you did an illustration and you showed it to somebody, and they said, "Yeah, it's good as an artwork, but it's not working as an illustration." Right? So in either case, uh, you were not explicitly told why it is an illustration or why it is a painting or why it is not a painting, but the student then kind of intuitively tried to gauge, okay, if the professor is saying this is looking illustrative, then why is it looking illustrative and why it is not working as a painting, or if it is looking just like an artwork and not working as an illustration. So it was more of an intuitive process, and you just had to gauge through some trial and error. But there was never a concrete answer as such. And I don't think that was wrong in a way to not give an explicit answer. You probably need to find these things out yourself also. But it nonetheless is a very pertinent problem and question that plagues creative people. So, in my uh, kind of sense of understanding, uh, externally, really there is very little right now to differentiate between a painting and an illustration. Okay, so nobody who is well researched enough can say that something just by the way it looks is an illustration or is a painting. You cannot do that any longer. Okay, so then what are those things that make an illustration or a painting? I'll try to see what does not make uh, an illustration or a painting per se. So if you think about composition is can be used equally in illustration and in painting, and you can use the exact same compositions for illustration and painting and make good illustrations and paintings. Similarly, you can let us talk about medium. uh, Oil paint has been used for illustration. uh, One of some of the best illustrations masterpieces are in oil. All the great American illustrators that we've grown up on have painted in oil. Uh, Acrylics also have been used for illustration. Watercolor has been used for illustration. So the medium definitely is not a constituting factor for what makes a painting or an illustration. Um, Similarly, digital is also used for fine art now. So you can't say because it is digital, it is illustration. So then we need to discard medium as a definitive factor for what makes or differentiates these two. Some people may say that it is about the narrative quality or a storytelling element of the work that makes it an illustration or not. But then again, most of the Renaissance paintings are storytelling works. So
Absolutely. In
even,
fact, all the history of art we learn
yeah,
is so narrative. I mean, it is always
exactly,
story based.
exactly. So I mean, part of the job of painting was to have a narrative or to extend a narrative. So again, that does not really define or differentiate between these. So you can see how it is slightly problematic as an art student to really come to a conclusion of what makes an illustration and what doesn't. So in my understanding, then what I've come to see is, and just to extend this a bit, you can in fact use a painting as an illustration, which is a proper fine art work. You can just use it as an illustration also, and then it becomes an illustration. Or you can work around and end up having an illustration become a painting. So that also can happen. So then, really, what remains is what the kind of area of its the dynamics of the work, okay, and where it operates, that kind of decides what is an illustration and what is not. So the area of operation, what I mean by that is, um, a painting, regardless of what the subject is, uh, the area of operation is uh, internal to it, internal to itself. Whereas with an illustration, the area of operation is external to it and necessarily external to it. So what I mean by that is, even if a painting is telling you a narrative of something else, is uh, is about a location like a landscape, or it's a portrait, it's still the crux of it, or why a painting moves you or works, is because it has its internal dynamics. It has something within itself, within it, in its surface, that is making you interested in it. So it is within the space of that painting itself. Whereas for an illustration, the main criteria or the operating factor is external to it, where you have probably a headline or a storyline or a paragraph or some other matter that the artwork is tending to, uh, in a way, hyphenate or enhance. So the artwork in itself is not sufficient or not operating in itself. It is not independent and working internally. It is working uh, with a external factor, and that external factor is more important than the illustration in most cases, or the artwork. And then that decides whether something is an illustration or something is a painting. So a painting very easily can be an illustration, and an illustration most definitely is and can be a painting. So uh, that is one thing that really I have I've thought about it a lot, because it really was a problem for me as well. But this is how I've come to see it. So I guess this solves the problem then, because then externally everything is art, and what purpose it serves and where its operative forces lie, that simply decides what is an illustration and what is not. So that helps you appreciate both areas also equally better.
That was amazingly described by you, Aditya. But I will also like to point out to the non-artist community that unless and until you experience these internal and external operators, it's also again little difficult to understand what is meant by that. So I mean, of course, but I'm sure that this can become an anchor point, for people to introspect into and think about it. So before going to next question, I will definitely want to request you to show some of your work if possible, or any demonstration.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay. Before going further to
Yes.
next question, I will like to request you to show us some kind of work, or if you can show some demonstration which you have with you or something like that.
Okay. I'll right now, what I'll do is I'll show you a couple of images, not my work specifically, but I'll show you a couple of images of two artists, one illustrator and a painter. And I'll show you, I'll try to kind of put forth how something cannot just really by its looks can be described as an illustration or a painting. So it's very hard. So I'll just try to show you that. Okay. And then move.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, people will get the visual anchoring into it. Absolutely.
You'll just have to bear with me a second, okay? Because I'm slightly not too well versed with Zoom.
No problem. You can share through share screen, but before you share, it has to be open for Zoom. So it is the same like, it would be on any.
Okay, so is this window visible?
Right now we can see your Explorer. Yes.
Yeah, so you can see the thumbnails, right? Is this visible or?
No, now what happens is you'll have to stop the share, and when you share back, either share your desktop or the window which is open.
Okay, so what are you seeing right now?
There is some disturbance in the screen right now, but if you can stop this screen share.
Yeah, I've stopped it now.
And now when you are going back to sharing,
Hmm.
you have an option of screen share, which is, it shares everything that you will be.
Okay, right.
That way it is easier. Otherwise, what you can do is you can directly select the image. But that way,
No,
you'll have
I'll
to-
share the screen. That's better.
it's on.
Okay, right. So first, I'll just start with this image.
Yes. Now we can see everything that you're doing on your computer.
Okay.
Every
Great.
time you go to browser, also we'll be able to see.
Sure. That's okay. So this is an. I'd like to ask you: is this a painting or an illustration? That would be very interesting.
Yeah, so we have people who can, put it in the chat box.
Yeah,
I will
anyone.
request everybody to put it in the chat box. And if people are seeing this live on Facebook, you can also put it in the chat. And I will request Pallavi ma'am to have a look at the Facebook, or even Nupur ma'am is there. So have a look at Facebook simultaneously. If somebody is answering, you can help. And here, if somebody puts on the chat, we will get to know, sir will also get to see it.
Sure.
So Shrutika is saying it's a painting. Mrunali is, Akanksha is saying illustration. Then Murali is saying more than illustration.
Okay.
Then I think it's an illustration. Savita paints it. So people are having different opinions.
Yeah, so it's a split opinion. It's not clear as to what it is, right? So essentially it is a painting. Of course, it is a painting. It is done in oil. It is composed in a very beautiful tradition of, the golden point, all of those things that we know about the standard routine of art. Okay, but using all the known points, still creating something very dynamic and still very interesting. And the way he breaks this line with this small wave, how he's used this small kind of wave coming in over here, all of those things, the small birds flying over on the back. So all of this really is effectively a painting, but of course, the way I framed the question is a giveaway that it is supposed to be an illustration, simply because it's by one of the great illustrators, Howard Pyle, and I suppose for either Maroon or Treasure Island or something like that, he did some really brilliant works for that story. So this is an illustration. I love this because of its how brilliant the composition is. And if you fine art people will know Rothko, the great abstract expressionist. So this somewhere is in line with that. And in fact, if the more you see Howard Pyle, you'll see, you know, either two real slabs of color or three slabs of, color, which is very reminiscent of Rothko as an abstract artist. So uh, so this is a painting by Rembrandt. Okay. Now this can easily pass off as an illustration. We're saying it's a painting. I think it's titled "Storm at the Sea of Galilee" or something. But and there's that's Rembrandt himself actually. That chap looking straight back at us is his self-portrait in it. But the point is that this work can pass off as an illustration. There is no reason why it shouldn't or can't. And conversely, uh, there is this work, okay, which is, I think it outdoes Rembrandt in every which way. I mean, there is he's really completely on a different level in terms of color, composition, you name it, and this painting really uh, is a masterpiece. But this happens to be an illustration. Okay, so so you can see the problem of just simply trying to identify illustration or painting by uh, its external looks or how it looks. You just cannot. So in that sense, what happens is, why this is an illustration is because this is accompanying a story, and the story is more important in that case. So the external operative is the story, and this is not in itself, uh, working in that context. Okay, whereas the Rembrandt painting is not an illustration and a painting because in itself it encodes the entire story, and it is supposed to be working within the frame itself rather than outside it with some supplementary dialogue. So I hope this has kind of addressed or made
Absolutely.
the point that I was
Absolutely.
making clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that people would have started at least, questioning this again and again.
Right.
And because, as you said, you need to have a experiential understanding before you can actually start differentiating. And at one point, the differentiation also, uh, uh, it doesn't mean much
Right.
at
Yeah.
a certain level, but that is an elevated level again.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. Definitely. Pallavi ma'am, will you take the next question?
Yes, absolutely. That's so
I'll stop sharing now.
sir, to minor differences are there, but you explained it so well. So we would now like to know that how in classical music there is riyaz for the ragas and everything. So certainly, similarly in fine arts, applied arts, in any kind of art form, actually, one has to practice and practice. So we would like to know your routine of practice in general. And if you could show us some of your work also, that would be very nice.
Sure, I'll do that. I'll just start off by saying Riyaz is a given. It's you have to really do your practice or keep honing your skill. It is never, unfortunately, with a creative endeavor, it is never the case that at a point you feel that now I know and now I can do something, or I'm really good at this. Okay, there is a very brief phase. Like if you work for 2 months, then the third month you think you know a bit, and then the next week you realize that you really don't know anything about it. So Within all of that, you have a brief phase where you think you really know everything, but that is such a brief phase that it doesn't count. The only thing that is stable is that you keep understanding that how much little you know about the thing that you are doing. So every day you realize you can't do this. Every day you try to do something and you want to hit, uh, taking the anecdote of music, you want to hit a particular note, but you realize that you don't have enough, uh, you know, uh, gumption in you to reach that pitch. So the only way is to just get up every day and practice and keep a period of practice for yourself, regardless of whatever happens. So I can't show you right now, but my studio is strewn with sketching pads. So at any given moment, there are at least 3 sketching pads lying around over here, and in a month, at least those 3 sketching pads are generally uh, completely filled. So, and I believe with the advent of digital media, one does tend to think that sketching may not be important. Okay, and I'm just sticking to sketching or this right now because we are talking about illustration in a sense. So in that case, even if we have digital mediums and softwares to help you out, the two things of basically honing your skill, A, and to get down your idea very quickly or to jot it down uh, in a kind of shorthand. That can be done really effectively through sketching. So your very simple pencil and your sketching pad or paper. Uh, in fact, I was just writing in an essay somewhere where uh, mark making is basically a very primal response. Okay, so even more than talking or doing anything else, mark making is the most primal way of expressing ourselves. So if you give a small child a crayon or a pencil, the first thing he'll do is he'll start making marks. So sketching is an extension of that. So we tend to express better and more effectively through sketching. So in that sense, for practice and Riyaz, I think just having a sketching pad and a pen and a pencil, and to just keep sketching and scribbling ideas or compositions or themes, anything that comes, but sketching it out into a sketching pad really helps. And then uh, to further it, then setting aside maybe half an hour to uh, specifically um, exploit a application or a software. So not really trying to create a artwork or an illustration in that software, but just trying to use the tools that the software has. We get used to 2 or 3 tools and then we stop using the others. And for you could go for years not knowing one particular tool exists at all in that entire software. So just setting aside 20-25 minutes just to explore the application or software also, without trying to really create some masterpiece in it, but just trying to play around. So that also uh, helps a lot in my opinion. So very simple analog uh, practice of using your pencil and paper. That is, I think, irrepressible. ते करायलाच पाहिजे. आणि सॉफ्टवेअर्स एक्सप्लोर करत राहणं, बिकॉज every few months you may not know that there's some change, some extra feature that you could use probably. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are definitely looking forward to seeing some of your work before we go
Sure.
ahead.
I'll just show you a time lapse.
That will be great.
Yeah. So I'll show you a time lapse which specifically was I did it simply to use a completely or as far as possible an analog technique of traditional printing using a completely digital media. This was a character sketch that I did as a demonstration. So you'll see I'm using a technique of painting which is more organic and more traditional rather than creating selections or clipping masks or so on and so forth. I'm just using a very organic way of painting stuff. I'm obviously using layers to keep it slightly clean, but I'm not using clipping masks so that I have a very clean section uh, of an object.
Wow, this is a treat to us. Absolutely.
This is with time lapse for fashion illustration students. So this is obviously a very stylized, much more stylized version of the human figure. I'm very keenly aware that I don't try to impose my style or technique while showing some demonstrations to students when I do, because uh, I try to just give them a sense of techniques and workflows. So this is basically some of that, but I don't impose a specific uh, style on them because that is for them to uh, find out. I just give them a brief sense of workflow and how things should progress in a linear fashion.
Wow, that was amazing. Now there are many more questions that we have for you. For
Okay.
example, after looking at these demonstrations,
Mhm.
I will definitely want to ask you, what are the different brushes and any other plugins that you depend on or that you explore? How often
Right.
do you bring in new plugins? Are you do you think that an illustrator has to be savvy about all those things, or our you know uh, uh, pure old Photoshop kind of a software is good enough to take
Right.
care of the
Right.
needs? And also while we are doing the illustrations on digital versus physical,
Right.
especially I feel that digital is much more forgiving at times, because you can
Definitely. Yeah.
absolutely abuse it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yet reincarnation is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And you
with
can.
physical,
Yeah.
at times, beyond a certain level, the materials will give up.
Right. Yeah.
So if you can talk about all these things, it will be interesting.
Sure. Funnily enough, the illustrations I have done professionally have all been hand illustrations. So people have come to me specifically because they want hand illustrations from me in watercolor. So you can imagine that really makes it hard. So a couple of covers that I did for Penguin were watercolor based. A couple of Marathi books also did covers were watercolor. Uh, so obviously traditional media is you don't have Control Z. That is the biggest drawback, and you don't have distortive tools. And probably the biggest plus point for digital media is working in layers, being able to work with layers, and that makes the whole thing non-destructive. Okay? I'm sure all the art students know the importance of working non-destructively. So working with layers, you can easily just modify a particular layer without destroying other bits that you've done well. So that definitely is a big plus point with digital illustrations. And like you said, um, it's a dicey thing, with plugins and with new brushes or all of those things. Uh, once you get a काय म्हणायचं खूप त्याची हे लागली की चटक लागली म्हणतो तसं की मग त्याच्यात तासनतास you can just go onto the internet to find new brushes, new plugins, all of that, new actions, all of that happens. But after a point, I guess really the core uh, basics and the core workflow, if that is in place, you don't really need too many new fancy things to work with. And in terms of brushes, that I think is important because brushes you should be able to your brush should be able to work with you. You shouldn't be fighting with your brush. So the brush that you're using most often should be tailor-made or tweaked. So if there's an existing brush in Photoshop or in Procreate, you should take time to tweak it according to your needs. So I spend generally in a month I spend a day just to tweak the brushes or create a couple of new brushes to work exactly the way I want to. So in Procreate also there's some really wonderful ready-made brushes as well. I use Procreate a lot on iPad, but I've specifically spent 2 days just to create a very typical brush, typical in the sense typical for my way of working and style. Uh, so that the brush works exactly the way I want it to, and I don't have to keep changing multiple brushes. So I can use that one brush to create multiple effects using that single brush. So
I feel that is so analogous to your, work in physical realm, because
true.
artists are very particular about their brushes specifically.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah.
I mean, you give them a number and a brand and ask them if they can replace it, with your old brush. Artists
True.
will not be willing to do that.
True. You get comfortable with a particular brush, the weight of the handle, the way the bristles work. So all of that becomes second nature, and kind of a muscle memory to you. So you don't have to really think it through after a while. So that's why brushes, and that's the same thing with digital as well. After a point, you don't want to really think about what the brush is doing. You just want to move your hand, and the brush and the pencil should do what you want it to do. So if you tilt a pencil in a certain way, that brush should create a stroke in a particular fashion. If you press it straight down and increase the pressure, that brush should work differently. So all those things should be taken into account. So while it is really fun and sometimes you find really brilliant brushes online and you can buy a few as well, so there are plenty free available also. You should take time to really try to make your own brush, because once you do that, you'll not need too many. Right.
Yeah. Yes. So then going forward,
Yeah.
we'll like to discuss with you, there is very important need for an illustrator to have, different styles. We see that, some illustrators are very specific about the style that they use and they're very consistent in that style. Mario Miranda, we have so many examples, and then we see artists which do adapt to different styles and they kind of can take them out as you take out tools from their, genre, from their repertoire, and they can use it. So if you can talk about that.
This again is a very problematic area for creative people, in the same manner that the first question of whether something is an illustration or a painting. Uh, Whether to have a signature style or whether to have multiple styles, that is a big question. In my opinion, you should have a signature आणि स्टाईल तुमची डेव्हलप होऊ द्यायची जशी होती तशी, आणि त्याच्यातून once you're really into the work that you're doing, even if you tweak or change styles, your particular signature is going to show through, is what I believe. And there are some people like Mario Miranda, you said, or there's plenty of really brilliant that have had a very signature style. I mean, R.K. Lakshman, inimitable style आहे. But then they were काय म्हणायचं, you could say they were blessed and kind of, you can use the word genius. I mean, you could for them. ती स्टाईल त्यांची ती म्हणजे काय म्हणायचं, बोलण्यासारखंच त्यांच्यासाठी ती स्टाईल होती. त्यामुळे they could work with that one style and create anything that they want. So I'm not against having one style, but right now with the kind of environment that we have, what happens is people are very impatient to arrive, especially art students, I guess, are very impatient to arrive at a particular style, and in doing so, they lose out on experimenting and trying to evolve or find nuances and other subtleties that they would have, and they try to very quickly jump and settle down into one kind of style, typically something that is prevalent at that point of time. So तसं न करता, taking your time and to find your style eventually is a better option, according to me, rather than just to jump onto one specific style. If there is a style that you are very comfortable with, it slowly will start creeping out and will push aside every other style that you are painting. So, but just forcing yourself into a particular style I don't think very wise to do, especially as an art student. As an art student, you should really try to explore every possibility. So in that sense, I think I'm more agreeable with Picasso, where he used a particular style for a particular series or at a particular time, where he felt that kind of style was required or relevant, or he felt like it, and then moved on to something else when he felt it. So I personally think that is a better way to go, because आणि आपल्या दर दिवशी तीच गोष्ट करायला किंवा खायला पण आवडत नाही. त्यामुळे काहीतरी आपल्या ह्याच्यात वेगळं वेगळं होतच राहतं. ते दिसलं पाहिजे असं माझं मत आहे, पण there are obviously examples who are near genius level who prove this wrong. So yeah.
That's true. That's true. But before we go further, I will like to request all those who are attending, if you have any questions for Aditya sir, you can put them in the question answer section, which is down near the video and near the chat section. So just open that and you can put in your questions. And over to Pallavi ma'am now.
Yes, that's so amazing to see the time lapse video. It's just brilliant that the traditional form is getting so much advancements and we are seeing it. It's amazing. So we would like to know that what is your inspiration? Who does artist Aditya Shirke look up to? That's what we would really like to know.
Okay. There are plenty of people I look up to. Start off with Prathamoik is, like I said, my guru. So I think everything comes back to him, and there is anything I do, no matter how even conceptual. So I had a show which I did was without any paintings, just some textual lines and light pieces. But even there, at the back of the mind, the influence or the thought or the talks that I've had with Mr. Prathamoy come through, knowingly, unknowingly. Uh, then there is, like I just mentioned, there's Rocco as an artist. All really good American illustrators like Howard Pyle, Rockwell. So all these were the golden age of American illustration. Really, they are still very relevant because they did the basics right. So the software जरी आले असतील तरी, you know, once you have the basics in place, then softwares are just an extension. So their works are so strong that you can always go back to them. Maxfield Parrish, uh, no software really comes close to the kind of blues and colors that he managed to create. So I look up to these people now and then, and my uh, philosophical um, inspirations are slightly more minimal and abstract, in the sense that there's an artist called Yves Klein. You may be aware of him. He did only blue paintings. In fact, he created his own blue called the International Klein Blue. It's like a ultramarine blue, but a very rich blue. So all his paintings are basically just blue canvases, most of them. So his idea on minimalism and the sublime, or Barnett Newman and his ideas on minimalism. Then there is Gaitonde आपल्या इथले abstract मधले, पळशीकर असतील. So these are all abstract artists, but their philosophical views and how they've handled space and form uh, really helped me in my figurative work. So I'm primarily a figurative painter. One could say that. But the underpinnings still come from these abstract and minimal thoughts and inspiration.
That's great. And there is one personal question from my end that we would like to know about the show which you co-curated for Kalagram Pune.
Right. So that was like W is not equal to M. That was the show. Very interestingly, I created the logo for it also. So it was co-curated by me and Lisa Pingre, the owner and curator of the gallery, Mona Lisa Kalagram. So the thought behind W is not equal to M was that almost every year we tend to have a show, a woman-centric show around the time of Women's Day. So many galleries have a show where women artists participate, and it's kind of an all women artist affair. So Lisa was of the thought that let's do something slightly different. And she asked me, would you have any ideas, of how to make something different? So I said, you know, uh, my thought was way into I, the fourth wave of feminism right now, and there is a certain problematic discourse in that where where equality is obviously sought after. I mean, that is a given. I mean, men and women are supposed to be equal. That there's no doubt about that, and that should be there. But mm, a certain amount of sameness, implying sameness of a man and a woman are same, uh, is in fact detrimental and takes away from the individuality of each person. And uh, so that was the initial idea that men and women are different in their own way. They're brilliant in their own way. Okay, women may be more brilliant than men, but there is a difference. Let
You
us
are
not.
playing safe, Aditya.
No.
Yes, with all women
Yeah,
around
there's
here.
three females and I'm the only one. So no, but this is the exact kind of conversation that we had. You know, there is a difference, and we need to celebrate the difference. Why to make everything same? So the danger right now that is happening is we are conflating equality and equal rights with a certain amount of sameness. Uh, so we decided to go with this idea of W not equal to M, so that the title itself is slightly, problematic for some people. And then the idea was to have pairs of artists, a woman and a man who is working on a similar subject or in a similar medium, and pair them together and just put them together on the gallery walls, and kind of an experiment as such, to find out if indeed W is not equal to M, or is it equal to M. So for instance, there is an artist who works with fabric assemblage like godadi or quilt making. So she does really wonderful abstract work with the quilts, and ripping out cloth, a bit of fabric, and then आपले गावात गोधड्या जर बघितले असतील तर तशा प्रकारचे क्विल्ट, but in a very contemporary fashion. And then there is another artist, a male artist, who works with this idea of godhadi, and he paints. So she uses the fabrics directly to create assemblage, and he paints godhadis and uses it in a different manner. So we paired them together. Then there was somebody who was doing nudes, a female artist, and then a male artist was doing nudes. So we paired them together, and then we just had a uh, you know uh, a show where these people working in similar mediums but different uh, genders were put together to see if indeed this hypothesis is, or the title is, holding up. So that was the whole idea behind that show.
So now I feel that we will go to question answers.
Yes,
And
thank you.
After these question answers, before closing, I will definitely want to request Aditya sir to show us his work, which he has done in Karkhana, which was a
Sure.
recent show. So that we will keep it at the end, but
Yeah.
let us take questions from the viewers. And for that, we'll request to the student moderators to take over.
Yes. Thank you, Aditya sir. I will now request Sania to address the questions from our viewers.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. The question for you is how to start as a beginner to make illustrations or to be a illustrator.
So, Sania, also tell who is asking this question so that we know from audiences who is asking.
Okay, so Nidhi Mittal is asking the question.
Okay, so how to start?
Start as a beginner to make illustrations or to be a illustrator.
Okay. Um, just start is the most obvious answer. But find out what you're comfortable in, or what you like in terms of subject matter uh, first, and then you can start trying illustrations in that subject matter. Okay, so that is the easiest way to start something that you are naturally interested in, and create hypothetical situations or storylines or an incident that you want to create an illustration on. Okay, so that is a very good exercise to do. So you just create hypothetical incidents or situations that you would like to visually illustrate, and then you can go about trying out a few.
Okay, so the next question is, as a beginner to digital illustration, which software you would suggest?
Photoshop remains a really strong software, and it also obviously now supports pressure sensitivity and all of that. So you can definitely just use Photoshop to start off with. If that is too expensive, and it can be, uh, you can use Sketchbook. Sketchbook Pro is a free software by Autodesk. It's also a very good software. Uh, in fact, it can work for most situations, and quite a capable software and free. So you can use Sketchbook Pro. And if you're using iPads, you can use Procreate. Procreate is a wonderful software. I personally use it a lot. In fact, most of my digital works, I use Photoshop and Procreate a lot. So I use Procreate primarily, and then I tweak it with Photoshop if I need.
Okay, so the next question is from Sharvari. How do you study animal forms or anatomy apart from digital references?
Okay. So anatomy has to be studied from life. Okay, whether it is animal anatomy or human anatomy, the understanding and the complexity of anatomy uh, can be only understood if you really study it from life. No number of books or let us say digital videos or anything will work. But once you start understanding human anatomy, then you realize that animal anatomy is just a little bit of variation from that. So if you understand human anatomy really well, uh, then it becomes easier to understand animal anatomy, because it is almost the same thing with a few modifications. Okay, so animals are basically humans walking on their hands and legs. Okay, म्हणजे आपण जर असे चालायला लागलो, तर their anatomy is basically the required modifications of our anatomy to be able to walk like that, consistent. We can do that for maybe a minute or two, but for them to do that consistently, they have some modifications. But once you understand human anatomy, then animal anatomy becomes easier to understand. And I personally am a great proponent of really understanding anatomy in its actual visible form, but also in the written form. So it may become slightly biological or tedious for some people. And as artists, we love to see direct visuals and diagrams, and don't want to read. But there are some wonderful books which give you really detailed analysis of what the form is doing, how a form functions. Anatomy ultimately is about function, how a muscle pulls a certain bone in a certain way, and all of those things, how where a muscle origin and insertion, pronation, supination. So these are basic movements, flexion, extension. These are basic movements. So once you understand these core concepts, then it kind of makes the job of anatomy slightly simple, I'd say.
I like to say that there is Leonardo is not revered for no reason. Correct? He's the first one who started with dissections and doing
Right.
the anatomical studies, illustrations. So
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, and it's a great insight that that you gave, that it's not only about the form, it is about the function of that
True.
anatomical structure. Thank you, thank you.
Okay, so the next question is from Murali Raman. It is, why female nudes and why horses in paintings and art?
Um. Okay, so this is more about my art practice and the subjects I do. Why female nudes? I'm genuinely uh, of the opinion that the female form is much more interesting than the male form. Okay, it's completely my personal opinion. I don't have a grudge against the male form, but I find the female form slightly more interesting than the male one. Uh, why horses is, in effect, I have thought about why I paint horses a lot, because that's one of my main uh, series, a perpetual series that I keep doing. And so apart from various painterly considerations of how I'm uh, merging a traditional format of oil painting for the horse and then a pop art background of a very strong flat color of acrylic colors. So oil painting, acrylic painting, pop art, Renaissance glazing, all of that, and thinking of style called painterly pop. So all of those painterly considerations aside, at a very core level, I think they substitute for the absence of the male nudes. Okay, so the horse in effect is my male nude. Okay, because they are just much better than male nudes. Okay, I prefer a horse to a male nude, I suppose, because it is the same thing. The horse has a very lean skin. Okay, okay. Uh, those who have been to gyms will know that people take steroids to make their skin thinner so that the muscles, pop out and the shape of the muscles look much better. All of that. Gyms, they do all sorts of weird things. But the horses are blessed with a thinner skin with very little to no fat, superficial or subcutaneous fat. So all their musculature and all their muscles show through brilliantly through their skin. And I suppose then in terms of a male nude, I find a horse more masculine than a male. So I think that is why I paint horses and female nudes. Hopefully that had some clarity.
Yes. So the last question is from Sharvari again. How does one keep reinventing themselves as an artist? Is there any need for reinventing at all?
Mm, yes, stagnation is the worst thing for an artist. You making bad stuff is okay, but just stagnating and doing something that you just know that you are good at and just playing it in that safe area is uh, kind of the most dangerous thing for an artist to do. So in that sense, not reinventing but experimenting and constantly trying to push yourself. Reinventing is a slightly um, rebellious idea. Okay, so experimenting and pushing your boundary a little bit every time you start working. So आज मला एवढं येतंय, I can do something to this extent which I know I can, and then pushing myself and just trying to find out can I do this is probably something which is necessary for any creative person to do.
Okay,
Thank you so much for answering all these questions and bringing in a lot of insight. We'd like to see your work, as I said, about Karkhana, and then we will move towards closing.
Sure. So I've primarily not shown any of my artworks. You can see that on my websites or my Instagram. I'll show you a video that we did like Shruti ma'am said, I had a show at Karkhana in January. The brief window that we had more or less opened up through this lockdown. In fact, to celebrate the idea of the to end the previous year. Okay. So I'll show you the video of making those artworks. They were made in that art space in about a couple of days, and they were made using household mops and brooms. Okay, so that was kind of an experiment, and it builds on probably the question that you asked about reinventing or experimenting. So I used horses as the subject, but I used different materials like household mops to basically paint them. Okay.
Sir,
Hmm.
sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but when you share the screen, you will have to share the sound as well. So the sound is audible to all the people.
I'm sharing the
So
sound.
right now you have to stop this share.
Okay.
And when you next time go for sharing, the window will come, dialog box, where you
Okay,
select
share
this.
sound. Okay, sure.
Just at the bottom of that window, you will say
Yeah,
share
yeah.
computer sound
Sound,
and
sound.
optimize. Yeah.
It's visible now, no? Okay now? Right.
I think we can give a big applaud.
Thank you.
Just a minute. I'm just going to change this view to gallery. And yeah, really, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pallavi ma'am, we can take this forward now towards conclusion.
Yes, Sanya, you may now conclude the session.
It was indeed a great honor to listen to you, sir. I would like to thank you for the enriching session. I would like to thank respected Professor Anuradha Parasar, Dean, Faculty of Fine Arts, Media and Journalism, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Faculty of Law. I would like to thank respected Dr. Shruti Nigurkar, Head of School of Fine Arts, all the faculty members and all the participants for joining in. To conclude the session, I would like to request our technical team to play the Pasada.
आता विश्वात्मके देवे येने वाग्यज्ञे सोषावे सोषोन्मज जावे पसाय दानहे जे खळांती व्यंकटी सांडो तया सत्कर्मी रतिवाढ भूता परस्परे पडो मैत्र जीवांचे दुरिताचे तिमिरदा विश्वस्वधर्म सूर्ये पाहो जो देवांशील तो तेला हो प्राणी जात वर्षत सकळ मंगळी ईश्वर निष्ठांची मांदियाळी अनवरत भूमंडळी भेट तू भूता चला कल्पतरूंचे आरव चेतना चिंतामणींचे गाव बोलते जे अर्णव पियुषाचे चंद्रमे जे अलांछन मार्तंड देता बहीण ते सर्वाही सदा सज्जन सोय रे हो तू किंबहुना सर्व सुखी पूर्ण होनिसिही लोकी भजिजो आदि पुरुषी अखंडित आणि ग्रंथोपजीविये विशेषी लोकीये दृष्टादृष्ट विजये हो आवे जी येथ म्हणे श्री विश्वेश्वराव हा होईल दान पसावो येणे वरे ज्ञान देवो सुखिया झाला
Thank you everyone for joining on behalf of the management of MIT World Peace University. on behalf of the Dean, MIT World Peace University School of Fine Arts, Dr. Anuradha Parasar ma'am, and on behalf of myself and all my faculty members and students, I really want to thank Aditya sir for coming on this platform and sharing your knowledge. I think that this was amazing discussion, and anybody who is aspiring to be illustrator, they can definitely draw from these discussions and work towards their journey. So thank you once again for all the participants.
Thank you as well. Thank you, the entire panel and MIT. And hopefully hopefully something, at least a sentence or a word was worth taking away from this.
Absolutely. We are going to cherish on this. Yes. And for those who are participating, who are viewing, if you want to have a look at this conversation, you can definitely go back to the live session, which will be available on Facebook page of MIT World Peace University's School of Fine Arts page. And you can leave your comments there. If you have any further questions for Aditya sir, I will say that, you can put them there on the live chat. And I'm going to request Aditya sir that after a couple of days, please do visit and reply questions. That will be
I'll do that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Before we close, I will just like to remind that these SoFA talks are ongoing and we are on the 5th session. We are going to have many more. So stay tuned and do attend all our sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Aditya sir. We will close with your permission.
Thank you, sir.